Okay, so let's take a look at the database manager. So once you have MorphMan installed, if you go to Tools, then you should see the option MorphMan Database Manager. And when you open it up, here we have the database manager. So basically, the database manager is a tool for analyzing and manipulating databases. And recall that a database is basically just a simple file that contains words in it that MorphMan uses to keep track of what you know. So basically, there's three main features that the database manager has. The first is analyzing databases that already exist. The second is creating new databases from a text file. And the third is to create custom subtitles with this adaptive subs option. So first, let's look at how to create a new database based on a text file. So right here, I have a text file. It's just a Japanese book, Boku wa tomodachi ga sukunai, just in normal old text format. So let's say that I wanted to take this book and then turn it into a database file with all the morphs contained within it. So right here, so basically all these options up here in the first half, these are all for the analyzing databases that already exist. But the option to create a new database based off a text file is these two right here. So first, you just want to choose the language. So in this case, Japanese, and then extract morphemes from file. And now I'm just going to go and choose that file. And we got an error, unable to import file. Please verify it's a UTF-8 text file. So I think this is because this text file book that I have, it's not in the right encoding. So in order to fix that, all we have to do is open it up in Notepad, go to File, Save As, and then right here, choose UTF-8 as the encoding. Change the name a little bit. And now here we have the same thing in the correct coding. So again, we're just going to go to Extract Morpheme from File, go to the desktop, see if I can find it. Here we go. And then it's going to save that back onto my desktop with the name textfile.db. So now what this textfile.db is a database file that just contains every morph that was inside of this book. And so now that we have this morpheme, we can use the top feature up over here to analyze it. So if we click on Browse for Database A, and then we maneuver to the desktop and open up this database that we just created a second ago, and then click on A, then we can see all the morphemes contained within it, and we get some stats on it. So we can see that there's almost 5,000 different morphemes in this book, and then we have some information about the parts of speech. Now, as you can see, it's broken up into 4 columns over here in the main section. We have the actual word, some stuff about the part of speech, and then the reading. But that's because we have results as 4-column morpheme checked off right here. But if we check off results as 1-column morpheme and then click on A again to display the database, then we just have the words without any of the other information. So that's just what this is here. It's just, do you want it the 4-column full information, or do you want just the word? Now, the database manager allows you to open up 2 different databases and then compare them to each other or analyze them. So let's say, for example, that we wanted to compare this database, which is based off of this book, to all the words that I already know. So all the morphemes that are already in my MorphMan database. So in order to do that, I would click on Browse for Database B, and then go to make sure I'm in the right profile. So this is just a temp profile I made for demonstration purposes, temp 5. I'm in temp 5, and then DBS. So basically, you want to find your app data folder, and then roaming, Anki 2, the name of your profile. And then when you first, like normally you wouldn't have this folder DBS in here, but once you download and install MorphMan and then recalculate the database, then it's going to automatically create this folder, and it's automatically going to create these 4 databases, because these are the 4 necessary databases for MorphMan to actually function. And so, you know, I explained what these are earlier in the article, so I'm not going to go into detail, but all is all the morphemes contained in your collection and your database, and then mature are all the ones that you know well, then they're seen, known, so on, so on, and then you can edit the parameters in the config file. But like I said, I already explained that elsewhere in the article. So let's open up mature.db, because that's all the morphemes that we supposedly already know. So now that we have the 2 different databases opened up, if we click A to B, what that's going to show is all the morphemes that are in A, but not B, which in this case means all the morphemes that are contained in the book that we don't know yet, supposedly. And we see it's over 4,000, which is quite a big number, which means that this book probably isn't going to be very comprehensible to us at this point. Now, if we wanted to, we could also click BA, which shows all the morphemes that are in our database in this case, but not in the book. And we have almost 500. And then we got a few additional options here. So intersection is all the morphemes that are contained in both the book and, or in this case, in both databases. So in this case, both the book and in our collection. It's all the morphemes that are in both database A and B. Symmetric difference is the opposite. It's all the morphemes that are contained in either A or B, but not both. And then union is just all of them together. So basically we have a bunch of different ways to analyze these two databases. We get information about it. And then if we want to create a new database out of one of these subsets, then we can click this save to results to DB file. So for example, if I wanted to create a new database that was a combination of all the morphemes in this book with all the morphemes that were already in my collection, I could just click union and then save results to DB. And now I would have a new database file right here. That would be, all the morphemes that are listed here, all of them together. So as you can see, what we're really doing with the database manager is we're just manipulating these database files, but we're not necessarily actually influencing how MorphMan or Anki is going to function. And so if we did want to influence how MorphMan is going to function, then basically there's two different main options that we have. One is to import external knowledge through an external.db file, and the other is to set priority morphs with a priority.db file. So to take a step back, remember, this is the folder associated to my Anki profile that keeps track of all the morphs that I already know. So this is really MorphMan's database right here. So if we want to influence MorphMan and Anki, we have to be dealing with things inside of this folder. All the stuff we do over here, that's not actually going to influence anything. Now, you never want to try to manipulate any of these four databases directly because these are automatically generated and updated by MorphMan. If you want to affect the database, then like I said a second ago, you're going to want to either create a external.db file or a priority.db file. And so I'm going to show an example of that right here. So basically, the first real way that you would want to use the database manager to influence MorphMan is if you have knowledge that is contained in your head, but not in your Anki collection. So let's just say that you have been studying Japanese for a long time, but you just recently started using Anki. And so there's a lot of words that you know, but aren't actually kept inside of your Anki collection. Well, you need to tell MorphMan that you know all of these words in order so that it can update its database and then correctly sort all of your new cards. And so one way that you can do that is by getting a text file filled with words that you already know, and then feeding that into MorphMan and telling it, I know all of these words. So how you actually do that is, like I said, first you'd get a text file. So let's just say that we know all the words inside of this Japanese book because we read it and it was easy. And so we want to tell MorphMan that we already know all these words. So what we would do is we would use the extract morphemes from file feature to turn that text file into a database file, which we already did right here. And then we'd put that database file inside of the correct folder, the database folder for our profile. And now we have to rename it external.db. Now, if it's not named this exactly, external.db, then MorphMan is just going to completely ignore it and it's going to be as if it wasn't there. So you have to be very careful on the renaming. But what's going to happen is every time you recalc, MorphMan is going to look at this external.db database and it's going to assume that any morphs contained within it are already mature. So let's actually try this out. So now, as you can see, it currently says that I know 1,000 morphs. But there were 5,000 morphs in this book. And since I added the entire book to my external.db database, when I recalculate the database, it should go up to over 5,000. So MorphMan recalc. And there we go. So that's basically how you use the external.db. But now let's say that you read a second book, which is this one right here, let's just say. And now you want to also add this book to your collection. Well, you don't want to just override the old external.db because you want to make sure that MorphMan always knows that you still have all the morphs contained within this first book. So what we can do is, well, step one is to simply create a database out of the second book. So we're going to go to Japanese, extract morpheme from file, try to find the book, and then just save that there. So now we have two databases. This is from book 1, this one is from book 2, and we want to tell MorphMan that we know all the words from both of these, not just one or the other. So what we can do is first we can open up the database from book 1, then we can open up the database from book 2. We can click Union, which is going to combine both of them. See, we have a total of 16,000. And then we can save results to DB. And then we can actually just save this right into the directory and call it external.db and override it. So now the external.db that we just overrided is going to contain both all the morphemes from book 1 and book 2. And so now when we recalc, Control M, this number should jump up. And there we go, it's up to over 16,000. So whenever you want to add new external knowledge, make sure that you first create a database out of it, and then combine that database with your old external.db so that your external.db is the total conglomerate of all the morphs that you know but aren't inside of Anki. And again, you never want to try to mess with any of these four because those are updated by MorphMan automatically, and there's a good chance that anything that you try to do to it manually will either be ignored or it will confuse MorphMan and things won't go well. So always make sure that you use the external.db to add stuff to MorphMan's database. So the other main use for using the database manager in order to affect Anki would be if you wanted to add a priority list. So you can also create a database of morphemes that you don't know yet, but are high priority for you, that you really want to learn, and then put that inside of this folder. And then MorphMan will automatically give higher priority to any cards that contain any of those morphs. So to demonstrate this, right here I have a frequency list of the 3,000 most common words in Japanese that I got online. And so let's first turn this text file into a MorphMan database. So we would just go to Japanese, extract morphemes from file, select that 3K, and then save this, override the old one because we don't really need it anymore. So now, right here, this is all the morphemes from this 3,000 word frequency list. So if we drag this in here and then we rename it priority.database. Now remember, the name has to be, just like with external.db, the name has to be exactly priority.db for this to work. And then we recalc the database, then it's going to add the priority tag to any cards that contain a morph that's contained within this database. And it's also going to give those cards a higher MorphMan index, which means that they'll be sorted higher and I'll see them first. So it could be pretty smart to use this feature with a frequency list, like in this example, so that, you know, when you're sorting cards from a giant deck, like a subs to SRS deck or something, you're seeing the ones that are more frequently used, which means that they have more value to you as a learner. And so this is a cool little feature. And so the difference between the priority and the external DB, well, one of the differences is that all the morphs contained within external DB, Anki is going to assume that you know, right? It's going to add it to your all.db and your mature.db. But all the morphs contained within priority.db, Anki's not going to be assuming that you know those. It's just going to use it as reference to sort your cards, but it's not actually going to add any of those morphs to your list, obviously. So that's why the morph count didn't go up, because again, this is just so that it can sort your cards more to your liking. But if we open up the browser and we click on the priority tag, we now see that we have 65 cards that are high priority and are going to be sorted higher due to them containing a word that is one of the 3,000 most common words in Japanese. So that's pretty much it for the database manager.